Oh, that's a heavy wheel of cheese. So this is going to be your Alpine Cut. Right now we're going to be working with Gruyere, which is roughly a 74 to 75 pound wheel of cheese. The same cut can be used for Comté. The main thing is these Alpine style cheeses come in a very large format. Now, some of you may not be receiving a whole wheel of Gruyere or Comté. You probably get an eighth of a wheel, which is fine. But please just watch the video because I think it's important to see exactly where that eighth of a wheel comes from. So just bear with me and we'll get through this together. The first thing that we need to do is to score this cheese. So we'll need to get our cheese scorer. And we'll also, for a whole wheel, we'll need to get our, I refer to this as a piano wire, but this is a double-handled cheese wire. This is what we'll be using to open up this whole wheel and to crack the half wheel. After that, we'll put those tools aside and go back to our platform wire box cutter. So with the cheese on the counter, the first thing you need to do is make sure you have your scoring tool. This is a sharp blade. So of course for our sharp blades, we put on our cut glove. And here again, you'll see that it has this little tip. We'll want to dive that whole little tip, I like to get it centered, directly into the front, and we're going to pull this all the way back. And then we're going to take it all the way across. From here, we can spin the cheese to score this side all the way down. And while cutting these cheeses, you'll notice a lot of flakes from the rind are going to go everywhere. That's important to note because when we're wrapping for pre-cuts, we'll want to make sure that we don't get into these little rind giblets onto the face of the cheese. But to continue to score it, we'll need to flip this over, again, carefully. And we'll need to find where we scored the cheese, and we'll do our best to meet it up in the middle. So here, just like that. I think I've done that a time or two before. So what we'll need to do now though is we've got to configure this two-handled wire underneath this wheel so that we can pull it through. One way to do that is to grab it, have your wire while the cheese is down, and drive it into the cheese while it's on top. Now we can flip this over with a wire already embedded into the cheese, and it'll be much easier pulling it towards us. So make sure the wire is in there nice and good. Flip it back over. And basically, all we have to do is, just like the platform cutter, we're just going to pull this straight. Just like that. We can set that off to the side. Now we have 2 half wheels of Gruyere. 1 half wheel we can move to the side, as we don't really need that. With only half a wheel of Gruyere left, we can move over to our platform cutter. To do that, of course, we'll need to move our Gruyere, set up our cutting station, move our wire off to the other side, and of course, always here, we've got the face of the cheese facing forward and the rind of the cheese is facing me. I'm going to simply just cut this in half so I can end up with 2 quarter wheels of Gruyere. Nice and easy, just like that. So we'll move 1/4 to the side. But now this is still a little big. So we can continue to cut this down into an 1/8 of a wheel. And as we've always done, making sure that the rind is facing us, because it's just easier to cut through the face of the cheese. So we'll line this up as much as we can to get it into the center. Pull that towards us. Now we're to 1/8 of a wheel. This may look more familiar to most of you. So from the 1/8 of the wheel, what we can do is, there's several marks that we need to make. We need to cut, again, the nose of this cheese off because we want to make that a sellable piece. For here, we're going to cut it along right here, and this is me gauging it by eye and experience. But this will roughly be 1/2 pound. So now with the nose, we'll face that way. But we need to continue because this is still, that would be too long of a cut. So we're going to continue to cut into the wheel of cheese this way so we can get more manageable pieces. And again, we're eyeballing for roughly 1/2 pound. So we keep going. There's another beautiful piece. And we're going to continue on. Now this one I'm going to cut a little bit thinner, of course, because you see it's getting wider. And you'll see that once I put the wire on there, I'm holding this with my left hand. That helps me keep control of the cheese as I'm cutting it. So we've got 1, 2, 3 pieces out of the nose, and we're going to cut at least one more, just to make sure that we can get to the right spot on the back end. So here I'm going to cut a little bit thicker. So here, this you'll see is going to be roughly about 1 pound, and I'll end up cutting this in half. So, but for now, with my thumb and hand over the wire, I'm holding the cheese steady and pulling the wire through. I'm going to set this off to the side. And for this cut, you'll see that flakes do get everywhere on your board. You just have to wipe them off and do your best to keep the face of the cheese from touching the board. So here I'm just going to cut this in half. Now, this piece, this is where we're going to get our pre-cuts from. You'll see how this is a much more manageable piece of cheese. So here, like the rest of the times, we're going to center this and cut this in half. Again, with a hand over top, pull it nice and easy, and we can continue going half, 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 and half. And you'll see again, cutting that in half, to where once we see the final product, we're going to be looking at a cut of cheese that resembles this. And that is your Alpine cut. For wrapping of the Alpine cut, again, very similar to all the other ones. We want to make sure that we don't have any of the rind flakes on the paste of the cheese. We also want to make sure that the wrapping is not torn. Now, you're much more likely to tear your plastic on a Gruyere than you would, say, like a red wax Gouda, because you do have on this rind some sharp pieces. This piece is wrapped nice and beautiful. You'll see that all the bunching of the plastic is on one side. This is where your scale label would go to hide that. And where applicable, this is where your pre-pack label would go.